Welcome back to Almost Pro Bites, where we take a small bite at the big topics in sport. Today's topic is one Laura and I have touched very lightly on a few times in the other episodes we've recorded recently, because we do think about this one a lot. The question is, when you watch elite sport today, are you watching a competition to determine the best athlete or team, or are you watching a product that's designed for entertainment first and competition second? There's technology and broadcasting and sponsorship and social media, content, billion-dollar television rights. And all of this has transformed sport. So has something fundamental changed? Is winning still the point? Or is keeping us entertained becoming just as important?
Yeah, this is an interesting topic, and it can be a very debated topic, I think, as well across sport. But let's get into it. And to be fair, I think sport has always entertained people. Even if we look right back to the ancient Olympics, with the crowds that they attracted and how boxing has filled stadiums around the world and football became a community event because people just love to watch it. Entertainment itself isn't new in sport. I think what's really different here and what we're talking about here is the scale of it. Professional sport is now competing with so much. It's competing with Netflix and YouTube and TikTok and gaming, so much so that it's just no longer just competing against other sports. It's competing for our attention. And we live in a world of endless scrolling, instant highlights, and on-demand content. Sport has become just another player in the battle for our time, and that's changing the way it's being packaged.
Yeah, totally agree. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It's this currency called attention. So attention has become the currency in the world, where if people are stopping the sport viewership, or they stop watching whatever sport is on TV, broadcasters are losing their viewers. Therefore, sponsors are losing exposure. Therefore, the leagues are losing revenue. And you can see this really neat tie between them, right? And so naturally, sports are going to ask the question, not how do we find the best athlete, but how do we keep people watching whatever the sport of the moment is? FIFA's a cracking example right now. And don't get me started on hydration breaks.
Oh, yeah, neither. We'll stay clear of that topic for
Yeah.
now. But,
Yeah.
let's look across almost every major sport, right?
Yeah.
So many rules have changed over the past 20 years. It's hard to keep up with them. And the rule changes haven't necessarily made competition fairer. They've certainly made it faster. They've
Yeah.
certainly made it in some regards and in some sports more exciting, but definitely more television friendly as well. Some of the classic examples that come to the top of my head would be cricket. Like, let's look at the 2020 cricket and how they've transformed the game. The shot clock has changed in basketball from decades ago. We've got the golden point in rugby league. We've got I'm gonna mention tennis as always, but the tie-break innovations in tennis, shorter formats, even in swimming and athletic events. There's so many changes taking place, the extra line and netball, and it's happening. It feels like every year there's more rules being brought into effect to shorten sport overall. Every sport seems to be asking, how do we remove downtime? How do we create more highlights?
Yeah.
It's just happening at such quick rate.
Yeah. How do we hold the attention, right? Going back
Yeah.
to real currency question or commodity question, how do we hold the attention? And, interestingly, I think even the landscape of officiating has changed. If you look at, and we talked about this just recently, the influence of technology in the way sport is played and consumed now, because we're consumers, that's what this entertainment and attention currency creates. It creates a market of consumers, people who are watching. But the officiating landscape, even bringing in VAR and the bunker and Hawkeye and goal line tech, those types of things, they are designed to improve accuracy. And I think we've covered that topic. And I don't think you can necessarily discount that they have improved accuracy of decision making and the overall officiating experience. But they have also changed the way we're experiencing emotion, because we talked about that, right? That notion where celebration pauses while everyone waits for technology to give us the answer of how we're going to feel. But I do think the moment by then has disappeared, and that's when attention becomes, depleted or entirely captivated. They're using the way technology interrupts the flow of game to interrupt the attention grabbing, right? So they'll find other ways to keep your attention. It's suspenseful when VAR is involved or the bunker's involved.
Yeah, absolutely, and that brings us into this other layer, right? Like we've got the commercial reality of what's actually happening here and how that's changing over time with advertising and broadcast deals and streaming, and let's keep going down the list. We got, the
Uh-huh.
on-field microphones and
Yeah.
on-field interviews. I don't know if you've watched the NBA or the WNBA recently, but the coaches are mic'd up on the court as well, and they look like they're trying to split their concentration between organizing the play on the court and also paying attention to the commentators' questions on the headset. We've got whole documentary series that are happening now, and um, it's like every single moment is content. Trying to think of
Yeah.
an example, but there are examples there of athletes too that are mic'd up. And that to me is the wildest part. And it happens a lot in exhibition matches, but we're starting to see that happen on field or on
Mhm.
court
Yep.
in real time competitive matches.
Yeah, we've seen it in the exhibition matches on the tennis, right? Where they get their mics on, it becomes a bit gimmicky, and I think, like, I enjoy that format. Maybe I'm part of the problem here, but I enjoy that format, not instead of competition tennis, though.
Yeah.
I think there is a place where that exists, and we're entertained by it purely because it sets out to entertain. I'm not discounting that athletes also set out to entertain, but I think what you mentioned when you talked about mic'd up coaches in the middle of games, I just think is so distracting for them. Like, why do we need to be in their minds in critical moments for them? And it goes right to the heart of the last thing you said before, which was, that every moment is content. Every moment is content. And athletes are not just athletes anymore because of NIL, because of social media, because they're brands, they're creators, they're expected to be present on social media by probably by their sponsors, but also by us, by the consumer, right? We from them. We want them on our podcasts because we want to hear behind the scenes. We want to see behind the curtain. They're expected to be filming content and building their own brand and audience. It is a completely different skill set than setting out to be the best at your sport.
Absolutely. Have you seen even the end of some of these games where typically players would go over to the interviewers that step out onto the fields and the courts to ask a few questions, but they've got their phones out recording for their own content, for their own streaming that's a separate entity to the standard commercialization that happens through the games. It's just everywhere. But here's the twist, right? This isn't inherently negative. Commercialization, I don't think, is the villain. In many cases, it's the reason sports have grown into global competitions. They're generating huge amounts of money for the sport, and that in turn goes to the players, goes to expanding maybe the entire competition. More franchises come into the sport, and it grows. So entertainment, by bringing the fans, it brings the money. Money improves the facilities, as I said, it improves the athlete support. As mentioned, it improves the professionalism overall. And I think without entertainment, many sports just simply wouldn't survive financially. And I think that the WNBA is a really great case study for this at the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. I do think there is a layer of balance though that's needed because I think what we've seen is like you can see it in scheduling oftentimes, right? Where it's probably not in the player's best interest to play at certain times, but because of broadcasting rights, because of where they want to broadcast in different parts of the globe, players are playing at pretty outrageous times. I mean, tennis, have we all not stayed up way past bedtime in the middle of a slam because they're playing so late for so long, but that is the best commercial hour, you know? So I think it is when for me, the balance is when the commercial interest starts to influence schedule or rule change or, the format of competition or even perhaps how we officiate. I do think it's fair for us to ask in those moments, who's driving the sport now? Is it the competition or is it the business that wraps around it, and what should it be?
Yeah, tricky, definitely tricky. And I think the reality is that modern sport, it has to be both, right? Like elite competition creates the product and entertainment helps keep it alive. Neither exists for long without the other. Without competition, there's nothing worth watching. And without entertainment, there may not be enough people watching to sustain professional sport.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, the substance underneath all of this is that entertainment should enhance competition, not replace it. That if we see that moment where ratings or audience base or commercial breaks or hydration breaks or social media moments start to become more important than the sport or the sporting integrity or the athletes, then even at that point, the contest is losing its value, right? So sport risks losing the authenticity that makes us fall in love with it in the first place. Competition is why we watch this. We want the winner and the loser. We want to see our team succeed, our athletes succeed, the people we're supporting succeed. But entertainment is why millions watch. And that's where, as you said, that's where the funding base comes from most of the time. So the truth is great sport can never sacrifice the first competition in order to improve the second, the entertainment. So I guess our question for our audience is when you watch elite sport today, are you watching the purest contest to find the best athlete? Or the best version of a television show? The answer probably says as much about where sport is heading as it does about where it's been. Thanks for listening to Almost Pro Bites. We'll catch you next time.